So I'm happy to share some insights about proactive confrontation. And actually I like to start with a joke that I heard recently that I like, that we can apply to that too. So the joke is about this rabbit that was looking to clean the house. And while cleaning the house, he's realizing that he doesn't have a vacuum cleaner. So he's looking around and said, "My friend the bear, I think he has a vacuum cleaner. Let me go check with him." So on the way, it's a 20 minutes walk. On the way he's going, and in his mind he starts thinking, what if my friend the bear doesn't want to give me the vacuum cleaner? And he goes and continues. And what if he's using it at the same time that I want to use it? And he goes on, and his mind starts racing, saying, maybe he's so selfish. Why doesn't he want to give me the vacuum cleaner? And he goes on and on and on, and until he approaches the door, knocks on the door, and the bear's opening the door and says, "My friend, the rabbit, it's so good to see you." And the rabbit is screaming at him, "Why do you think I need your stupid vacuum cleaner?"
Oh my God.
So, in regards to proactive confrontation, sometimes we have movies in our head. Sometimes we're afraid to confront. Welcome.
Hello,
Hi, good to see you. So I was just sharing a little joke about that's regarding to proactive confrontation as an example how not to confront. So we're saying that sometimes we're afraid to confront, and sometimes we're over confronting. We're people lacking the balance in one or the other usually. So for those who don't know, my name is Daniel, and I'm a teacher at the Kabbalah Center. What's your name?
Moshe.
Moshe? Chaim. And Kim. Okay. Just trying to... And so everything that we're sharing is from the teachings of Kabbalah and applied more in a practical day-to-day in our life in regards to confrontation, proactive confrontation. First of all, let me just ask you, where do you think confrontation is needed and we can apply it? And it's important to learn how to confront in the right way in our day-to-day lives.
Like setting boundaries.
Setting boundaries, okay. What else?
And for negotiations at work, there's a lot of confrontation.
Negotiation, yeah. At work. Yes.
Negotiation, negotiation.
Marriage, relationships.
Relationships will be a big one.
Relationships, right?
Yeah, anytime you have relationships, there's going to be some sort of conflict.
Right.
Especially if she has a family. She has siblings and parents. It's bad.
Siblings, parents,
And
yes.
if they live close by, on a daily basis.
So I think it's so relevant, and again, we're fluctuating. We're either we go to one extreme or the other. The question is really, how can we master it? How can we balance it out? And what can we do about it? So we want to learn today a few ways that we can, first of all, recognize where are we lacking the balance. And second of all, I would like to share with you 4 steps really in regards that can help us maybe mastering proactive confrontation. So first of all, as we said, sometimes we over-confront, right? Which can manifest as what? Can manifest as, being too aggressive, being too pushy, right? It puts off a vibe of anger. We know when someone is over-confronting us, right? We feel judged. We feel like it's not coming from a pure place, right? It comes from pressure. It comes from maybe he wants us to get things done, or she wants us to get things done, but it's really we feel their agenda, right? It's not really coming from a pure place. And sometimes we're under confront. How does that look like? What do you think?
Like you're a pushover.
Pushover? No, under confronting.
Yeah, when you're under confronting, it's just like you're a pushover. You give in too easily.
You're not getting what you want.
Yeah.
People kind of dictate what you do.
Yeah. So we're becoming like a doormat for people. Can you think of anything?
What they said.
Everything they say. Moshe Chaim, you got it. So yeah, I can tell you personally, like for me, and even especially before studying Kabbalah, I was a big under-confronter. I was avoiding confrontation at any cost. And really with the study of Kabbalah, I realized like how that is actually creating more problems, how that actually creates more conflict, right? So by trying to avoid the conflict, we're creating sometimes even more conflict. So over-confronting causes a lot of headaches because later on we regret what we said, or we said, oh, I should have said it, now I can't take it back. Under-confronting oftentimes can cause a lot of stomach ache, right? Because we feel like we should say, right, but we don't dare because we care what other people think. We don't want to be judged. I don't like to wreck the boat, Yesterday I just gave a class, someone came to me afterwards, and interesting because right before this talk, she was talking to me about how difficult it is for her to confront. And I asked her, like, why? What are you afraid of? She said, I don't want to make a fuss. I don't want to, pressure people. I don't want to. And, we're operating from that mindset. Oftentimes it causes more trouble as well. So what is really the balance? How can we reconcile it? First of all, I'd like for you maybe to think about or to share, where do you feel that you are on that scale?
Oh, I am definitely over.
Yeah.
Over confronting? You know each other, yes?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm a contrarian. I love arguing with people. I get a kick out of it.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's also it's a resentment issue. If you over confront, people resent you. If you under confront, you resent people. I feel.
Yeah.
But I'm just like, I love to argue. I enjoy arguing with people. I enjoy rocking the boat. I enjoy making things awkward or uncomfortable. I enjoy it.
What about it? What pleasure do you get from it?
I enjoy the social experiment of it. Just how people react. I enjoy seeing how people react to situations that weren't planned.
Are you a Scorpio by any chance?
I'm not a Sagittarius.
Sagittarius? Close.
I'm a double dragon. I don't know what that means.
Okay.
But somebody told me I'm a double dragon. Like a fire dragon. My
Yeah.
year is 88 is a dragon, and the month and time of
Is
day
it a dragon? We were born in the year of the dragon?
Yeah, in 1988, the year of the dragon.
I'm lucky, I think.
You're a monkey?
I think I'm in the middle of like over confronting and under confronting.
Yeah. So it depends on the situation. What?
If you get me to that point, I will confront you.
I
I'll be
haven't seen
like,
that
hey.
point. I haven't seen that point in
No.
6 months.
What, the confrontation?
I've never seen the competition.
Yeah, I guess. Maybe I'm like,
Exhibit A, she
Yeah.
doesn't agree to.
Why don't you tell us?
No, you're right though. Like I haven't ever confronted you yet.
Wait. Wait.
Yeah.
Maybe she needs time to warm up and she feel comfortable confronting.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to err on the side of non-confrontation,
Mm-hmm.
Confrontation is uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to deal with the tension and all those people's feelings. I feel like it's just easier to let them do or say, and then I'll do and say whatever I want. It's kind of, I just avoid the whole thing and then everybody's happy.
Yeah. And how does it work out for you?
It doesn't.
It doesn't know. So what's the ideal? Is it better to over-confront, under-confront? The thing is, both are what we say in Kabbalah, both are reactive, basically.
I think it depends on the situation.
Yeah, sometimes, right, we shouldn't, sometimes we should. That's why we call it proactive confrontation, because the answer is not black or white. The answer is not, it's not good to confront. Sometimes it's necessary, right? The answer is also not, I should always confront, because sometimes it's not good, right? So we know a lot about what we call reactive confrontation. Reactive confrontation means we're on autopilot, our default mode. We don't think. That's what comes natural to me, right? So again, sometimes it will work out. Sometimes I think it works out for me, but really I destroyed other people. But really, it's not the ultimate way to confront, because it's coming from what we call our lower consciousness. Our lower consciousness, the Kabbalists explain, we all have different levels of consciousness within us. All the way we have there 10 emanations and 10 levels of consciousness, basically, they represent. The lowest one being a completely reactive mindset. Reactive mindset is when, again, we are in this autopilot robotic mode, where someone is pushing my button and I'm like, not even thinking. right? It's almost, that's why robotic, like animals, right? Animals don't think, they behave according to their nature. And sometimes we can be no different, right? So whenever we behave, whether it is, and one is not better than the other, whether I over-confront, and that's my reactive nature, or under-confront, that's my reactive nature, one is not better than the other. They're both operating from lower consciousness, from robotic default mode. So, first of all, before we get to the 4 steps or recommendations on how to approach a proactive confrontation, we also want to become aware of what are the ingredients, what is actually happening in the moment when we confront, and what are the participants in any confrontation. What do you think? Who is the participating? What is the obvious participants in any confrontation?
I mean, definitely arrogance or narcissism, where you think you're always right. That's me at least. I think I'm smarter than most people I meet, so I treat the conversation like that. I'm very open about it, like I do.
So that's like a character trait that it's part of the confrontation.
Ego. It's
ego.
You can't be wrong, which.
Yeah. So ego oftentimes, always actually, is part in the confrontation. When we bring ourselves, we also oftentimes bring our ego with us, which is wanting to be right. Ego has 2 sides actually, which one is the over-confronting side, which is wanting to be right, anger, control, judgment, that's one side of the ego. The other side of the ego, which is also ego, is the same ego, just a different side of the same coin, which is insecurity, fear, wanting to please. It's also the same ego, because ego means I'm thinking about myself alone. Right, so whether I'm thinking about myself selfishly as far as insecurity, right, I'm not thinking about benefiting others, so the bigger picture, or I'm thinking about myself versus I want to push my agenda on the other person. Right, they're both ego. So one component in the confrontation is, and to the degree that we are aware of how my ego is involved in the confrontation, to that degree we actually have control over it. So that's a very important part, even just noticing, where is my ego involved in this part? Am I Am I now prone to over-confront? Am I now afraid what they're going to think about me? Where's my ego involved in this situation? So there's me, there's my ego, and what else is a part of a confrontation? The other person, right? The other person. Now, the other person also has their ego and their issues that we need to realize. And another thing that's part of it, whatever we want to call it, there's a higher force. There's a higher force involved, right? There's a bigger picture. There's a higher force. That force is also within us. There's a higher consciousness that goes beyond our ego. There's an aspect about ourselves that cares, that is pure. So there's a higher force involved as well, that sees the bigger picture, that knows that it's about an opportunity for those 2 people to reveal something, to figure something out. So there's always also a bigger picture in a confrontation. So again, what do we have? We have ourselves, we have our ego, and we have the other person, and we have a bigger component, a bigger picture to wherever that story needs to unfold itself, right? In this situation, do you find yourself oftentimes thinking about, do you find yourself noticing how your ego is taking over? Or most of the time, we don't think about it?
I think there are times where you get to the point of no return, or even if you realize the other person's right, you're going to stick with your guns because you were so adamant about your opinion.
Yeah.
There's definitely an ego component. I don't think I actively think about the ego involved in it. Obviously, it plays on like a more unconscious level, but this is the first time I'm really thinking about it in those terms.
Yeah.
I think I'm thinking about it a little bit, but it depends on the situation or what the topic is.
Yeah. Most of the time, human beings, part of the lower consciousness is not being aware when I'm coming from the ego and when I'm acting from a higher consciousness.
Yeah, I mean, it also, like you were saying, also depends on the other person. Like, if I'm arguing with, per se, Isaac, who they both know, my ego's going to be a lot more in the argument than if I'm arguing with, let's say, Kim or Chaim. Like, there are certain people who I have to win the argument because I know what they would be like if they won the argument. So it's imperative for me to win the argument to maintain our relationship.
So sometimes the ego is more dominant and strong.
Oh yeah.
And sometimes it's like we're less attached.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a good point. Another element that I want to ask you is confrontation only with other people, or is it a different type of confrontation?
No, I mean internal confrontation is important to analyze yourself. Introspection, I guess, would be some sort of confrontation because you're looking at, let's say, uncomfortable things within yourself.
Right. So it's a big part as well, and it will be part of the 4 steps as well. Confronting ourselves, right? Becoming aware internally, and especially when it comes to where our ego is involved, right? But even confronting things like, it's also a type of confrontation. Confronting issues. Let's say I have a procrastination issue, right? How much am I identifying it and confronting that, right? So even when it comes to ourselves, there is an over-confrontive side of us, and there's an under-confronting side of us. So sometimes, how does the over-confronting side look like? What do you think?
So exactly, they're gonna say like, I confront myself every morning to get out of bed. Like I say the extra 10 minutes or not. So if you over-confront yourself, you actually get out of bed. If you under-confront, you stay in for another 10 minutes.
That's the good side of, I would say that's proactive confrontation, right? If you actually get out of bed. But if you're overdoing it,
You're saying in a negative way.
Yeah, the negative results of that.
It's going to lead to insecurity and doubt, and you're going to question a lot of your decisions. I mean, that's what I would think.
Yeah, I think when people, most of the time, when they're too... Huh?
You become a committophobe if you over-confront yourself.
Yeah.
You have commitment issues.
Uh-huh.
If you under-commit, then maybe you're just too willing to just jump into things.
That can be also one thing, right? You're overcommitted, maybe, right? And when you confront yourself too much, maybe it's also a sign that and it has a negative side effect, that you're too harsh with yourself, actually, right? That can be like people that beat themselves up, right? Oh, why didn't I do this? Why didn't I do that? So they're super aware of what they need to work on and change and transform. They're super aware of the ego, but over-confronting means that it's like they're too harsh with themselves, too aggressive with themselves. So it's not just when I confront others, but also when I confront myself, I can be over-confronted. It means I'm very harsh, I'm angry at myself, which it's also not proactive, right? Doesn't go anywhere. How does under-confronting look like? What do you think about ourselves?
Talking about somebody who does what they want, not through very little inflection. So any of your actions are appropriate.
Yeah.
Because you don't really have to.
Yeah, they don't really care much, right? They're not really aware of their internal world and their characteristics, and maybe even denial, right? Like maybe there's a lot of things about themselves that really hurt others, but they're not confronting it within them because they don't care. I don't care about hurting. I don't care how it's affecting others, right? So they're not paying attention. They're not confronting their internal issues enough, right? So also there can be under and over confront. So now we want to get actually to the points, the 4 quick points in how can we deal with confrontation, whether it's ourselves or with others in a little bit more proactive way. So the first step is actually really the first confrontation is to confront our personal ego. Before we actually, when we deal with confrontation in others or situations, we really need to look inside first if we want to come from a proactive place, and really becoming aware, and where is my ego involved? Is it wanting to be right? Is it getting a kick out of that? Is it afraid to wreck the boat? Right? Both are ego, as we said, just different sides to the same coin. So first I need to confront that. I want to become aware of that, because if I don't grasp hold and control of my ego, the outcome won't be nice. Won't be nice, because really every time I'm acting out of my ego, I'm planting a seed for negativity. It might work out in the short term, but in the long term, if the cause is ego, which is selfishness and has different mass and different manifestations, the effect will be some type of darkness in the long term. So if I'm coming from a purer place where I'm harnessing my ego, and I confronted it and I transformed it, if that's the cause, the effect will be positive. So that's the first thing that I want to confront. Where am I emotionally at? Where am I internally? Where am I coming from? What's the energy that I bring in to the meeting, to the confrontation, to the conversation, to that dialogue? Again, I want to be right, and then even I can say the smartest words that make so much sense, but if they came from a place of wanting to be right, that's what the other person is going to hear. That's what they're going to be perceiving. Right? So it's not just about the words, but really where am I coming from? What's my intention? Right? And therefore the ego is the first thing that we want to confront about ourselves, and keeping our ego in check to the best possibility, because it always creeps in somehow. Any questions in regards to that?
So is that the idea of affecting, like maybe removing, being condescending with your answer? When you remove the ego, you take away the condensation?
Yeah. It's becoming aware of that. Yeah. The second idea is also an important one, is asking ourselves, how attached am I to the outcome? Which is also part of the ego, right? But the more specific part. Like oftentimes we come into a conversation or a meeting, or we open up a dialogue, and we have different plans in mind. Again, if you want to generalize it, again, the two personalities. One is super attached to a specific outcome and pushing my agenda on it, and I want them to understand me, and I want this and this and that outcome from that. The other one is the under-confronting, right? Is worried and afraid of the outcome, right? What if they're going to say this to me? What if they're going to judge? What if this? What if that? So a proactive approach could be really detaching ourselves. I'm not here for a specific outcome. My intention is not for them to agree with me. My intention is not and if they don't like me because of it, I'm also okay with that. It's like a complete detachment, and not having actually a specific goal, a specific outcome, other than allowing the proactive confrontation, the story to unfold itself. I'm curious. It's a mindset of curiosity, opening up a dialogue, and knowing that if I'm doing it in a proactive way, for sure it will add value. I want to add value through this conversation. How it will manifest itself, I don't know. I don't care. And I don't want to be attached to a specific result or outcome. Because what happens when we attach, not just in confrontation or anything, what happens when we attach to things and then they don't happen? Disappointment, anger, upset, right? So if we come to that with that approach and that mindset of really coming from a pure place with no expectations, right? We're also guaranteeing definitely a better proactive confrontation. You know? The third tip and recommendation is timing. Timing is super important, right? Because I can decide, wake up in the morning, right, holding something inside, maybe for a month. I was planning to tell my friend, to tell my spouse, to tell my partner, to tell my colleague something that's bothering me about them. And really, it's truly a mistake, and they need to hear it maybe, right? And I check my ego before, and I check where I'm coming from, and I'm not attached to any result. But I caught them on a day where their head wasn't there. They were super stressed. It was the end of the month. They're in sales. There are deadlines, right? And I come to them in their lunch break before they had lunch, and they're super hungry. Tell them, I want to speak with you. I want to tell you this and this and this and this and that. They're not there to hear you, right? So even if I say what I say, it's right, and it's coming from a pure place, the timing wasn't right. It's not a proactive confrontation. Because I spoke when I felt like it, but I didn't check if it's the right timing for that person too, right? So timing is very important. So, sometimes we recommend that if I have something urgent to say, something to tell, and I think it's time to confront, sometimes we can do this test. Check yourself. If it can wait 3 days, go wait for 3 days. If you still remember it after 3 days, go for it. If you feel like, no, it has to be now, it's probably coming from my impulsive, reactive nature, from our lower consciousness, that is just ego-driven, right? So if I have to say it now, probably I need to pause and say, no, let's wait. Maybe 3 days, maybe 1 day. But timing is very, very important. And the last but not least, probably one of the most important ones. Simple but important to check myself. Where am I coming from? Am I coming from a place of love or not? So similar to what we said before, even if the words that I'm saying make sense, it's logical, the choice of words, it's beautiful, anyone in the world would understand it, it makes sense, but it's not coming from a place of care and love, the outcome is not going to be good. And they're not going to really hear. They say, why don't you understand? It makes so much sense. But all they really hear is not your words you're saying, but they're hearing judgment, 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 judgment. That's what they feel from us. So, very important part of a proactive confrontation is really more important than the words and what I'm saying, is that the other person, will feel that I'm coming from a place of love. That's, I would say, 80% is the energy that I inject into it, is my intention, is the love, the care. 20% is how I'm saying what I'm saying and the timing. Right? But that's really a big factor. So those are a few ingredients that can maybe create more proactive confrontation in our lives. Whether we confront ourselves, we can apply it for ourselves, or when it comes to meetings, friends, family, colleagues. There's a lot more, but this is a short lunch and learn session, so we wanted to keep it for that. Any questions?
No, just a comment that was really informative and useful. I thought we were going to be talking about, I don't know, things floating in the air and whatnot. When I hear Kabbalah, I don't really think of practical.
You think like a magic carpet in the old city.
Yeah, something like that. I thought we would walk out with like amulets or something. So it's nice to dispel some of these notions and very practical, useful information. So
Right. Glad to hear. Wonderful. Yeah, there's different approach of teaching Kabbalah, and where I'm teaching at the Kabbalah Center, we take a very practical, down-to-earth approach. Our goal is really so people take the wisdom and the knowledge and apply it in their lives. So whether it's in relationships, whether it's in business, with themselves, healing, whatever it is, we want to make sure it's relevant for people to use in their day-to-day lives.
This is the one that's around the corner?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I always thought it wasn't like a religious thing. I always thought it was just like some heebie-jeebie people doing something. Because yeah, I mean, growing up Orthodox, you hear the word Kabbalah, you think Madonna. You don't think a rabbi.
Right.
Madonna putting on
Yeah, that's what you think of.
Yeah.
That's really.
Yeah. No, it's always cool for me to see like the different places and backgrounds people come from, what they think it is, and after hearing, even a session or reading something, discovering, I get it a lot. People say, I didn't think it was that. That's actually makes sense, and I can use that. And
it definitely opened up a different perspective on the Kabbalah part.
Okay. Glad I was able to share. We also did a Facebook Live feed, so I want to thank all the people that watched us on Facebook Live.